Game budgets have gotten enormous. How much more can the industry take? Let me know where you stand in the comments below, but first, my opinion. I'm Tarmack, and this is Feature Creep. You know, it's kind of funny. We live in an age where the cost of producing a video game has in many respects actually decreased. You have engines like Unity and Unreal that are free for developers to use, asset packs sold by average Joe creators for pennies on the dollar from what they would have cost 10 or 20 years ago. Even Humble had a game dev bundle with ridiculous amounts of tools and assets that an aspiring developer could have bought for around $10. Why else would the indie scene be exploding in the way that it is, but for cheap tools that enable smaller game devs to make a push for their dream? So why is it that AAA development seems to be going in the other direction? Game budgets have been ballooning over the last decade, so much so in fact that a game developer has really only one or two failed projects between them and bankruptcy. Just imagine translating that same mentality into other industries. Imagine if Ford could go under because of two bad car designs. Imagine how little outside investment they would get for that kind of business model. In a lot of ways, I think the game industry is like the music industry. The game developers are the rock stars. They're provided funding and other assistance from the big publisher, but they're living on borrowed time unless they're one of the few exceptions which happen to be the biggest, most successful developers. Even worse if the publisher buys them outright because the studio doesn't even have to have product failures to be shut down. Sometimes not meeting profit targets would be enough. And the spillover effect of all of this is what we see around us in the game industry right now. A huge number of major games coming out right now from many big development houses have some method of monetizing additional content post-release. Dare I say even a majority of big label games. This could be in the form of expansion, but those are rare. More often than not, it's microtransactional DLC, skins, weapons, a little quest here and there, XP boosters, etc. Some of these add value while others pretend to do so, but at the end of the day, it has infected the industry in a big way. And why? Well, frankly, it's because $60 US for a game just isn't enough for the game publishers anymore. Games, for the most part, have always been around that $60 to $80 price tag. It's never been adjusted for inflation and whatnot, so why wouldn't they want to get some more cash? Games are expensive to make. The thing is that simply having a more expensive product does not necessitate a more expensive end-user price. Why? Because these big budget titles are being designed more and more to appeal to a wider audience. The whole game community is millions upon millions of people larger than it was 10 or 15 years ago. If you increase your potential market, you also decrease the price you require in order to break even or make a buck. Why else do you think nobody's putting out a $200 million RTS game? The market isn't big enough for that. This idea that games are more expensive to make now, so the price should be higher, is not a linear relationship and a poor argument. They're expensive to make because the big publishing houses choose to make expensive games. There's been an expectation set by a combination of the publishers and the console manufacturers, and it's the same reason that the consoles of old were fine at 60 frames per second, but the current generation sometimes struggles to hit 30. Every new game has to be more graphically beautiful than the last game was. Performance be damned, cost be damned. And when you expect that level of graphical quality, the cost goes up. When you look at publisher income, you'll find that in the general sense, net income is going up at a rate higher than expenses. Of course, the capitalist people in the industry will say that sure, they're in this to make money. But what it does clear up is the whole idea of companies needing to put microtransactions in because otherwise they couldn't make these games because they're too expensive. That's nonsense. They want to put the microtransactions in because it makes more money, not because it's saving an otherwise too expensive to make product. Much like other avenues of development, what we're seeing is a solution created by the industry to a problem created by the industry, and it seems logical to me that at some point we're going to hit the ceiling. There will be a point where games are simply too expensive to make and something will need to give. But let's be perfectly frank, the ceiling is pretty damn high. Grand Theft Auto cost an estimated $250 million US to make and market, and it generated $800 million in worldwide revenue within the first 24 hours of release. If GTA 5 can well overclear their costs in the first day, that simply shows, with the right marketing campaign and the right game, as I mentioned, the expense ceiling is pretty high. Now, you throw into that the whole concept of microtransactions, which unfortunately we have very little data on. You won't see many companies talking about their digital earnings unless they have a world record to claim like Rockstar, who at one point claimed that those microtransactional earnings were half of their digital revenue. All in all, I don't think we're at the ceiling yet, but a high ceiling does mean very few players from the business side. Over the next 5 to 10 years, I think you'll see more consolidation in the game industry, the big dogs buying up the little guys. We'll also see the first $500 million investment in that time frame as well, like Bobby Kotick lied to us about the Destiny budget, but this time for real. You can already see the posturing begin. Ubisoft and Gameloft just had a bunch more stock bought up by Vivendi. Microsoft buying Mojang of all things. In fact, in the greater tech community in general, this same consolidation is happening with some major acquisitions in the last few years. With big expenses come the potential for big profits. The game industry has almost matched the movie industry for cost of development records, and as I mentioned, I don't think we're near a crash just yet. The problem, though, is that in the quest for big profits to fund the next multi-million-dollar project, we're going to see further proliferation of the microtransaction culture. In 10 years, I'm going to be able to say to the young gamers of today, "I told you so," when they start seeing pieces of games that they used to get for free being charged for. And on that day, they'll realize that they should have fought it with the rest of us old gamers, and they'll get a chance to see the next generation arguing that it's no big deal and that it's just because games are becoming so expensive to make. And that's to say nothing of the hundreds and even thousands of games which will be released every year that nobody ever hears about. What do you think about the ballooning of game development costs in the industry? Let me know down below. Feature Creep is a regular show every week, and I don't want you to subscribe. Nope, don't do it. Don't hit that button. Thanks for watching, though. That's all I have to say. Tarmack out.